Howdy, folks. What's going on? This is the Outlaw Hatfield back at you one more time. I am, 4 minutes late? I do apologize. Um, we've just had a lot going on. So we're doing the best we can to keep on keeping on. So anyway, tonight we're going to run this thing a little differently. We're just going to talk about some wrestling and try to take our minds off things that's going on in the country and the world, and have a little fun tonight. Let's cheer each other up. Anyway, Rich, how are you, sir?
Not too bad, not too bad.
The,
A little
the,
bummed right now, but it's not because of the election. It's
oh,
because AEW has their pay-per-view on right now.
oh, well, am I disturbing your pay-per-view watching?
No, I didn't pay to watch it, so I actually got Notre Dame Clemson on number
Oh,
one
well,
versus number 4.
huh. Are you rooting for the underdog?
Oh, I'm rooting. I'm Irish, man. Go ahead, go Irish.
All right, well, there you go.
Grew up a Notre Dame fan because my grandfather. My grandfather
Yep.
had 3 teams that he was a huge supporter of when it came to football. One was Notre Dame, one was Green Bay, and the other was the Steelers. So,
There you go.
got gold
Uh,
from all 3 of those teams, right?
yep. So, yeah. Speaking of football, and we could just sort of move this one right on into the topics at hand. Am I froze up? Looks like I'm
No.
froze up. Oh, okay. Just making sure. On my camera's froze on my end, so it's just my end. So I really can't see if there's anybody out here or not. Hold on a minute. Let me back out and come back. Maybe it'll fix it.
No, so far I'm the only one.
There we go. Now we're back
So
to cooking
far I'm the
pink.
only one that said anything up there, so
Yeah, good.
they're not. I don't got the
Um,
counter. You got the counter at the top.
yeah, okay. Well,
Well,
um,
if you're on a computer anyway, I don't know how it works on a phone. But
well, I'm on a cell phone, so.
yeah.
So, speaking of football, who do you think made the transition? Name a few guys that you think made the transition from football into pro wrestling and actually did a pretty good job at it.
Number one's got to be Ron Simmons.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
Um,
Number 2, Roman Reigns, man. He played football in college. The reason why he didn't play football, he didn't go to the NFL, is because when he got leukemia when he was younger, that killed his NFL career. His family and him talked to Vince McMahon and convinced McMahon to sign him to WWE on a developmental contract when their developmental was still Florida Championship Wrestling. Then that became NXT. But it was a personal favor to his family to try and get him to where he could do something because he totally had his NFL dreams crushed by leukemia.
where would you put Steve Williams on that list?
He would be top 10, but where exactly, I don't know, because there's a lot of guys that played college football.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a few that played pro football too.
Yeah, Goldberg played pro.
Goldberg, Jim Neidhart,
Yep,
Lex Luger.
yep. Who did Luger played for the Bears, didn't
I don't remember what team. He didn't have a big career, but Mongo was he
he? Yeah,
played. He's got a Super Bowl ring.
yeah, yep.
Vader,
Yes,
he
he
was an
does.
offensive lineman in the NFL.
Yep. There's been a lot of them to make that transition.
Yeah.
And you don't see that a whole lot anymore. It used to be something that would happen quite often, but what I have noticed is guys coming in from like MMA into pro wrestling. And
So
we'll
here's
look at
the
Ronda
crazy.
Rousey.
Yeah, here's the crazy one. Brock Lesnar did it in reverse.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
went
he
from pro
went.
wrestling to the NFL.
Or you mean the MMA thing?
No, he was in training camp with the Minnesota Vikings.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I didn't know that.
Before he went to MMA.
There you go. Well, I guess when you're Brock Lesnar, you can get those doors open like that.
Yeah, he played a couple preseason games for the Vikings and then was cut. He didn't make the cut. But he had never played football in his life. The fact that he made it that far is amazing.
Yeah, truly is. Yeah, you mentioned Steve Mongo McMichael. I wonder how long they had been planning on putting him in the ring before he actually got into the ring. Was that something they had set up from the beginning, you think?
It's hard to say. I haven't heard anybody tell a story about how it happened, so who knows? He could have just shown he could have just been lifting weights with the guys or something one day, and they found out how much endurance and strength he still had, and like, hey, you want to try this too? It could have been something along those lines. I don't know.
Yeah.
Now here's an interesting one. Can you name a baseball player who went into wrestling?
Randy Savage.
Yeah, I was going to see if I was. He's the only one I can think of.
Yep, Randy Savage.
Yeah, he was a Major League Baseball prospect. He was playing minor league baseball when he decided, nope, I'm going to go and do wrestling instead.
Look at you trying to be sneaky. Look at you trying to be sneaky.
A lot of people don't know that when you ask them.
Well, that's because they didn't really make a whole big deal out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he was pretty good at it.
Yeah, he was supposed to be a pretty decent baseball player. But he got tired of being in the minor leagues and decided to do something else.
Okay, well, so let me throw one at you. Name of pro wrestlers whose second passion is softball.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, but there's one in particular.
I don't know, because there's so many of them. I don't know which one you would be looking for.
Sid Vicious.
Yeah.
He would actually take time off from wrestling to play softball. You can believe that. Which is, to me, just unreal. I mean, there's no way he could have been making the money he's making in wrestling playing softball. There's not a way for that to happen.
No. But
so
some guys just do things for fun of it,
Yeah. Well, we've got 2 viewers, and I only see one person saying anything out in the room, and that was you. So, whoever's out there, thanks for stopping by. So we will see where this goes. There's somebody else got a show running right now.
G23, but he always does a show Saturday nights.
Oh wow.
You might have people over there because he was talking election crap and whatnot. So people might be.
Nope. We are.
I don't want to. I want a day off from that.
Exactly. We are not discussing anything to do with politics tonight, unless it has something to do with in-ring politics. So, and there's a lot of that. But no, I'm not. We're not even going to touch base with that crap tonight. I'm done. I've had enough. So, yeah, I'll tell you who impresses me. We're talking about outside hobbies for pro wrestlers or outside sporting events. Medusa is actually pretty amazing, man.
Monster
truck. Yeah, monster truck. She drives her own monster truck.
Yeah.
Martial arts. It's just wow. I never would have thought that a pro wrestler would get so hyped up about monster trucks, but she apparently really fell in love with it, man.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever really saw her race, but from what I've heard, she's pretty good.
If you remember back in the '90s, especially during the Monday Night War, there were a few guys that had monster trucks that actually owned them. They didn't drive them, but owned them.
Yeah.
Hogan owned one. Big Show.
I don't know. I don't know if Goldberg actually owned his or not.
No, his was the WCW truck.
Okay.
Stone Cold owned one. And there was a lot of guys back when it was really, really popular there for a while in the '90s that owned their own truck.
Yep. What's the driver's name? Tom Mintz. Wasn't that Goldberg's driver's name?
God, I don't remember.
I'm not sure either, but I'm pretty sure that was it. He actually done pretty good with that truck. I would see him win constantly back then.
Yeah. In the Monday Night War, you actually spilled over into NASCAR, if you remember, in what was the Busch Series back then. You had the WCW car and the WWF car. And for a while there, the NWO storyline spilled over into NASCAR with the WCW car. Because you had one guy who was the driver, some nobody, I can't remember who it was driving it when it was WCW car. They had a storyline in NASCAR, combined with NASCAR, where the NWO went over, kidnapped the guy, and he was replaced by Kyle Petty, the NWO car driver.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Man, it's been 20-some years, folks.
Mm-hmm.
If I can't remember at all, forgive me. I remember a lot, but not everything. Yeah, speaking of outside influences with wrestling, man, the last, I guess, 5 or 6 years of WCW, man, they were bringing everybody in.
That was part of the problem.
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, we're not going to discuss the whole David Arquette thing, but
good Lord.
Yeah, that was horrible. That was absolutely horrible.
What
Jay Leno.
What was worse, putting the WCW title on David Arquette, who had actually gone on to be a professional wrestler since then, or putting it on Vince Russo twice?
It's hard to say because both suck pretty hard. I'm going to say this, and if I take flack for it, that's fine. I happen to agree with Jim Cornette's assessment of Vince Russo. I think the guy is just a total dick. Let's just call it like that. He's a total dick.
Well,
that was not what I was going to say.
In the case of Cornette, it takes one to know one because Cornette is too. But
yeah, but
Cornette can tell some good stories. I'll give him that.
Yeah, here's the thing: they're a dick in a different way. Cornette is a unique personality. I've listened to his podcast. I love it. I don't agree with his politics, but I still listen to his shows. I think that he loves the sport. I think he's always respected and loved the business. Where Vince Russo seemed like to me he was doing everything he could to run it into the ground. Just completely,
Yeah, there's all kinds of conspiracy theories around Vince Russo. Was he more inept than what he thought he was? His ego would seem bigger, too big for his britches. That's the main possibility right there. But there's also conspiracy theory out there. Was he paid by Vince McMahon to do this? Which, that I wouldn't rule that out of the realm of possibility either. Not saying that
neither would I.
Happen, but I would not rule it out. But then there's also the one that's been going around for a long time, and that's Time Warner wanted to kill WCW, and Vince Russo was the tool to do it. So, I mean, there's and Eric Bischoff hasn't completely rolled out that last theory because of things that happened when Rusev.
Okay, let me ask you. Let me ask you a question. Let's throw this one out there. We're talking about theories. Vince Russo never comes to WCW. They never hire him. The Monday Night Wars still goes on. Eric Bischoff still in charge, doing the same things he had been doing for the previous 8 to 10 years. Does the WWF or WWE still win the Monday Night Wars?
Yeah, because Time Warner wanted to get rid of it. Eric Bischoff has stated that Time Warner wanted to sell off. They did not want to be in wrestling anymore at that time. So I don't think WCW survives being owned by Time Warner.
Okay, so let's take the Time Warner equation out. Let's say instead of Vince McMahon buying WCW, let's say the wrestlers get together, band together.
Hold on. Before McMahon bought it, Eric Bischoff had gotten a group of investors together. They were turned down by Time Warner.
Really?
Yes. Bischoff has spoken about that a few times.
Well, see, I didn't know that. But, here's the thing. I think that if things hadn't went the way they went, Vince McMahon didn't end up buying WCW. WCW would eventually, in my estimation, would have eventually completely taken over the market, and the WWF would be right where the WCW ended up.
I don't know, because at that point, when all that started happening, that was when the NWO was starting to run its course. Yeah. And at that point, you then had DX making its rise, Stone Cold Steve Austin and versus The Rock. And it was at that point where Raw started to win in the ratings against Nitro. So I wouldn't necessarily say that WCW would have won, but I think it would have went on a lot longer than what it did.
Yeah, but could you imagine some of the different storylines that could have came out of all that, though? I mean, you would have two huge companies. You'd have WWE in the north, WCW in the south. Whether or not it stayed in or around Atlanta is irrelevant, because you know if they was going to move north, they'd have went to Charlotte. Well, in my estimation, if WCW leaves Atlanta, it goes to Charlotte.
Yeah, here's the thing about this. Both were starting to base more out of Florida at that point. Especially WWE, that's where the Performance Center is. That's where NXT is based out of. There's been rumors that they may move with all the COVID and everything, with the crap going on in Connecticut, that they may be moving their headquarters to Florida, to the Orlando area. I don't know if either company at that point could be considered to be a northern or a southern company anymore.
Well,
they were both national at that point. I mean,
some
of the biggest shows that WCW had were in the northern part of the country now.
Oh yeah, they were definitely heading toward New York. In fact, they had done many shows around that area, the Nitros. So, Vince McMahon had to have been taking notice of what the heck was going on. He had lost for all those weeks in a row on the ratings. And you were right, right there at the end, WCW or WWE was picking up in the ratings again. They were slowly crawling back up. But, you had mentioned that the NWO was starting to fade, and it was. But look at the geniuses that they had working in the WCW at the time. You had Diamond Dallas Page. You had, Dusty was still involved. You had, Flair was still there. Somebody would have came up with something. Somebody would have came up with a way to, maybe not the NWO, maybe something completely different. Maybe, the NWO finally breaks up and, Goldberg creates a heel fraction with Sting.
They tried that.
Well, yeah, I know.
It didn't work.
Yeah. Well, I've often said you could never turn Sting truly heel because the fans wouldn't allow it.
Apparently, they couldn't turn Goldberg fully heel either because the fans didn't allow that either.
Yeah, exactly. They try. They really did try to turn Sting heel. It just amazed me. They were trying and pushing so hard there. What was it, 2000, to turn Sting heel, and the more vile he got, the more cheers he got.
Yeah.
And at the time, I think what it was the fans was just sick of seeing Sting get the short end of the stick, and now he's just taking his revenge, so to speak.
Here's the crazy thing: they tried it with Bret Hart too.
Yeah,
and same results. And up until his concussion that ended his career, they were trying to have him be a heel, and the fans just kept rooting for him anyway.
Yep. I've honestly thought, and I miss this. I miss this about modern today in modern wrestling. Back then, there were certain baby faces you just could not turn heel. They just weren't cut out for it. There's certain guys that are far better heels than they will ever be a face. And there's other guys that will be a far better face than a heel. Sting was one of those. Sting, I don't think would ever come across as a believable heel. I just don't see that. Whereas a guy like Arn Anderson, I could never see Arn come across as anything but a heel.
Here's the crazy thing about you saying that. Right now, he is the babyface manager of Cody, who's turning into more of a tweener, and Arn is trying to be the voice of reason to get him to just be the babyface.
Yeah.
Cody went to hit somebody with an object a few weeks ago, and Arn's the one that stopped him, saying, "No, you can't do that." Arn Anderson, the guy who would hit somebody with a chair in a heartbeat, and he's telling somebody, "No, don't do that."
Yeah, well, Arn Anderson's, it would take some getting used to see Arn Anderson in any other light other than a heel. Honestly, I really, it's like saying Ric Flair's a face or Harley Race is a face.
Here's the thing about Flair. Since he's retired from in-ring action, he's been face more often than heel.
Well, yeah, but he's not in the ring. That's the thing. When they get outside the ring, they can pretty much go whichever direction they want to. But as performers, as actually getting in there and doing it, could you see Ric Flair for any length of time being a babyface?
Well, he was to start his career.
Oh, yeah. But he was also, he was Ric Flair, but he wasn't Ric Flair. You know what I mean? At the start of his career. At the start of his career, he wanted to be a big body guy. That was his thing. He was,
Oh, he wanted to be Dusty Rhodes' younger brother.
Yeah, or he wanted to look like one of the Road Warriors because he was a power lifter.
Mm-hmm.
The accident happened with the plane crash. He comes back. He's trimmed down, way down. He's lost a lot of mass. But now he picks up the ability to actually move better in that ring. He can, you know,
He gets better technically.
yeah, he gets far better technically. And it works for him. And then when he added the whole heel persona behind that, it was just an amazing transformation. You know, I don't think there are too many guys out there that did heel as well as Ric Flair. Period. He made you hate him. You know, he made you want to get into the ring yourself and just choke the life out of it. I can think of a few others that were like that. Ted DiBiase. Ted was like that.
Oh yeah, especially the $1 Million Man.
Oh yeah,
Everybody
yeah.
wanted to kick his ass.
You know, Tully Blanchard was like that. So there are wrestlers out there that
Jake,
you know just they hit that nerve. They
yeah,
hit
Jake
they get
Robert.
the yep.
When he
Jake
was
Rock.
Jake, but
Yeah.
here's the thing with Jake, he could play face or heel.
Yeah. Well, there's some
Equally
guys
well.
that can do. There are some guys that can do either equally well, but a lot of guys can't. It's like that stint Ricky Morton took with being heel. It didn't work for him. It's
No.
Ricky Morton. Nobody's gonna buy Ricky Morton as a heel.
No, especially after the Rock and Roll Express, that just wasn't no. Ricky Morton turning heel was not Shawn Michaels turning heel.
No.
Shawn Michaels had an attitude that they were building slowly before the Rockers split. The split and the heel turn was just a natural progression. You couldn't do that with Ricky Morton. No, they didn't have him and Robert Gibson splitting up as a long storyline. That didn't happen.
No, the reason they split up at all was because Robert was hurt.
Yeah.
Robert got injured. They had to figure out something to do with Ricky.
And here's the thing: if they were going to split them because of one of them getting jealous and everything, it would have had to have been Robert Gibson that would have turned heel, because they could have played that off of Ricky Morton getting the title shots against Flair.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I don't think Robert ever got a title shot against Flair. But I'll tell you this too. Do you know why Ricky was arguably the more popular of the two, especially to the girls. But I think the reason they pushed Ricky over Robert so much was because of the way Ricky did things. Ricky was the smaller guy,
Mm-hmm.
It was rare Ric Flair was wrestling a guy smaller than him. Ric Flair is a big guy, but he's not, 6'5" and 290 pounds like some of the guys he was wrestling, or like Dusty Rhodes or Harley Race. He just didn't have that mass. Ric Flair was 6'1", 6'2" tops, and 245 to 49 pounds throughout most of his career.
Plane crash anyway. Before that, he was close. He was pushing 300.
Yeah, exactly. So, most of the guys that Rick went up against were bigger than him, stronger than him, whereas Ricky was smaller and lighter and could just move in the ring.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing too. There's another guy named Ricky that falls into that same category. That Flair
Steamboat
with, yeah.
Yep, I was going to get to that, but yeah, it worked so well that Steamboat was come in at what, 235, 240.
He was lighter than that.
Nah, I doubt it.
No, Steamboat was closer to 220. He was lean. He was really lean.
He was lean, but he was he was also he had some mass to him, Bubba. He was
muscle, yes, but he was built like a large safety in the NFL, which he would have been around 200, 225 at most. And remember, he wasn't the tallest guy in the world either.
No, he was 5'11".
Yeah. So you got to figure height's going to take off some of that weight too. He would have been around 200, 220, 225 most.
But those matches between Ricky and Ric Flair were some damn good matches. Mm-hmm. And I seen a picture floating around on Facebook the other day with Ricky Morton with the world title. And people were like, oh, well, I didn't know Ricky ever won the world title. And I was like, well, he didn't.
Nope. It was a promotional video in case he did.
Yeah. Ricky never won the title from Flair. I'd have loved to have seen it, even if it was just for 2 weeks. You know, loses it this week or wins it this week, loses it next somewhere else. Yeah, that would be cool too. Yeah. I'd have loved to have seen that with Ricky, but it just wasn't in the cards. Ricky was too much wrapped up in the whole tag team thing. I think that if the chances of Robert Gibson coming back would have been nil, then they would have given Ricky a hell of a push, and he probably would have ended up with gold eventually. I'll tell you another one that, you know, he's a bit taller. And they actually did give him a bit of a push. They gave him a television title for a while. Was Bobby Eaton.
Mm-hmm.
Bobby Eaton was an amazing wrestler. You know, he was chunky. He wasn't built like, you know, Stan, but you know, he could move in the ring. You know, I don't know if you remember the back in the day when they were making the WCW video games. Well, it was always Bobby Eaton that they got in there to, you know, show the programmers how to work these moves because he knew how to do them all.
Yeah, a lot of people say that Bobby Eaton was was the best professional wrestler that they worked with. Arn Anderson has said this.
Yeah,
Bobby Eaton is one of his most favorite people in the world. When you watch Arn or listen to Arn's podcast, right, that he does with what's his name? Conrad Thompson, Flair's son-in-law. You listen to whenever Bobby Eaton comes up, you can tell Arn Anderson genuinely loves the guy. This is the way he talks about him.
Yep. Well, you know, and that just goes to show you how good Bobby is at what he did. You know, you would listen to Bobby on a mic. He would get a little hot, but in the ring, he could be as nasty as anybody else. You know, he would look like he was laying them left hands in to knock your brains out. And I've heard people say, barely touched me. You know, I barely felt it. But it looked like he was killing them.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people forget that Bobby Eaton not only held the championships with Stan Lane and Dennis Condrey,
but
he also was a champion with Arn Anderson.
Yeah, he was. And it was also, like I mentioned earlier, a television title holder.
Mm-hmm. And he was, I don't remember if he was a champion with Regal, but he was in the stable and tag team with William Regal or Steven Regal in WCW. But,
I have often wondered, and see this, I like to do this. I really do. I sit back and I think about those old times and the matches and the way they were running the teams back then. You know, the way they were running their businesses. Bobby Eaton was so talented that he could probably have worked with anybody in the business. Could you imagine a Bobby Eaton in a Four Horsemen?
Yeah.
I've actually thought about that.
If it wasn't for the Midnight Express, Arn was going to try to get him in, but the Midnights were so popular at the time, whether they were heel or babyface at that point, because they flipped back and forth at that period.
Yep.
Arn wanted him to be in there as one of the replacement guys, but it just wasn't possible.
Oh no, of course not. Think about it. You got Jim Cornette, Stan Lane, and Bobby Eaton. That's money. That is money anywhere you go. I would love to see teams come back like that. I would love to see wrestling come back like that. You know, have a manager Jim Cornette-esque show up on the scene with a tag team, just dirty heels. You know, everybody hates. That can get the heat. That would make people want to hate them. You know, give the manager. Yeah, I know. I know. Give the heel manager some kind of weapon or tool he can use to, you know, foil the good guys or, you know, cheat for his team. And then come up with a true, honest to God, babyface team to go against them. You know. And right now, there's not really any babyface teams out there like that. Could there be? Possibly.
Oh,
but
for sure.
Yeah, but they don't have the same dynamic that, let's say, a Rock and Roll Express did.
If they turned pure babyface, yeah, when they were in New Japan, when they were doing pure babyface at the end of their New Japan run, yeah, they absolutely had that. When when you had the Elite versus Bullet Club, yeah. When they graduated them finally from being junior heavyweights in New Japan to full-fledged heavyweights, and they were feuding with the Guerrillas of Destiny for the World Tag Team Championships. Yeah, it was the Russians versus Rock and Roll Express all over again.
That was a match I need to go back and watch again. Was the cage match where the Rock and Roll Express beat the Russians for the titles. That was one of the few times that I can remember the tag team championships or any major championship getting changed on national television in the mid 80s. That didn't happen in the 80s. You never seen that in the 80s.
No. But speaking of, and since we're talking about tag teams, remember a couple weeks ago when we were trying to figure out if the Rockers ever held the WWE Tag Team Championship or WWF Tag Team Championships?
Yeah.
They did, but not
did they?
Yes. There was a Saturday night's main event taping towards the end of Saturday night's main event where they beat the Hart Foundation in a 2 out of 3 falls match. That was written out of the final show because NBC wanted to cut it back to an hour long when it would have been over an hour and a half. And so the match was botched because the top rope broke and they never came out to fix it until after the first fall. They had one title defense and then they took the belts off of them and gave them back to the Hart Foundation. At the same time when this happened, the Hart Foundation was supposed to be breaking up. They were going to start Bret Hart's solo run, and Anvil was going to be converted over to commentary. There was
okay.
Yeah, I just watched a documentary video about this the other day. It's on YouTube. I think it was on What Culture Wrestling's channel.
Yeah, okay.
But it was rather interesting where they were talking about it, and they were showing the clips from the match and stuff. But yeah, there actually was a time where the Rockers did hold the WWF tag team titles, but it never happened officially. It never aired on TV except I believe it was filmed in Indianapolis. That was the only place that it was shown on TV was in Indianapolis. because of the people that were there watching the match, telling people about it. So they felt they had to air the match there. And they're the only people that got to see the match was whoever was there or lived in Indianapolis at the time. Because remember, this was before the internet, so you didn't have people recording it and putting it all over the internet.
Yeah, they can never do that today. But, that wasn't unheard of back then either.
No.
Because supposedly Ric Flair had lost the title a couple of times at house shows.
Oh, yeah.
And then the next time you see him on TV, he's got it again.
Yeah. Well, they would do that. They would film a title change weeks in advance, but when they would appear local on live TV, the guy who had lost the championship at the taping was still holding the belt for the local live broadcasts.
Yeah. Yep. I've heard tell that Flair lost it in like Puerto Rico at a show, and like the next week or next night or something won it back just that quick.
Yeah, that was par for the course for the territories. It was one of the things they did to keep the guys in the territories over. They would have them face the champ and beat him, but then lose it the day or two later.
Yep. It's. I would love to hear how some of those came about from the source. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Any of them, any of the champions. How many times was you actually pinned, lost the title, and nobody really knew about it?
Ric Flair has said that if they were to count truthfully, he'd have well over 30 championship reigns from when he lost and regained the title in territories that never officially counted.
And could you imagine the names of those champions? The guys that actually pinned him? They would be, some of them I say probably did make it bigger, but I'd say some of them were local guys, just a territory hero, and Ric Flair would come in, do the job, next night pin him back, get the title back to be on TV with it the next week. And some of these guys probably made it. Now imagine that was happening today. Everybody that won that title would be a household name, and Ric Flair would have 70 title wins at this point.
Yeah, they couldn't do that today. It would be impossible with the internet. You could not do that.
Yep. Yeah, even if they said no cell phones or flash photography, anything like that, somebody would have a cell phone. Somebody would have recorded it.
Yeah, other than the southern territories, you go out west and whatnot, none of those territories out there had national TV coverage.
Nope.
The only ones that had the national TV was WWF, and then Georgia Championship Wrestling, which became WCW, along with Mid-Atlantic. They merged those together and formed WCW. Mid-South, and that was it.
Yep.
AWA up in Minnesota would have been the other one, but that's it.
But well, now hold on. Now once you start getting into the late 80s, early 90s, you did have others popping up.
Yeah. Briefly, you had WCCW. I wasn't done, but I mean, from the whole
and USWA
of the 80s, you only had 4 that had national coverage. Like you said, towards the end of the 80s, you started getting more of them as wrestling started getting more popular.
Yeah.
But towards the beginning of the 80s and through the entire decade, you only had 4 that had TV coverage that whole time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. AWA, NWA, WWF, and I'm forgetting one. Mid-South.
Mid-South was an NWA territory. That's why I was with, because you had Georgia Championship Wrestling and Mid-Atlantic, but they ended up merging in about, 84, 85?
Yeah.
So, I mean.
Yeah. It all became Jim Cockert Promotions.
Right.
Then there's a USWA, WCCW, NWA, WWF, AWA, Smoky Mountain, but that wasn't really national. That was semi,
You talking Jim
regional.
Cornette, Smoky Mountain?
Yeah,
That was in the 90s. That wasn't even in the 80s.
yeah, that was early '90s.
No, that was mid 90s. That was after
Was
he
it?
left WWF. And then they brought him back and had him running Ohio Valley. And then when they broke off from Ohio Valley, because they dumped Ohio Valley as their what am I thinking of? The developmental. Because that's where Cena, Orton, and Lesnar developed. That was in Ohio Valley. That was their developmental territory for WWE. They dropped Ohio Valley after those guys all got caught up and moved the developmental to Florida Championship Wrestling when they bought Florida Championship Wrestling, which is where Dusty Rhodes cut his teeth, was in Florida Championship Wrestling years ago, along with a guy by the name of Arn Anderson and some other guys that came out of Florida Championship Wrestling.
Yeah, guys, nobody ever heard of, right?
Yeah, and now Florida Championship Wrestling is NXT.
Yep. I don't know, man. We could discuss the what ifs of this all night long. There was just it when you stop to think about, like how many times did Hulk Hogan lose the WWE Championship or WWF Championship in the '80s and nobody ever knew about it?
Never.
You don't think?
WWF wasn't a territorial system.
Mm.
That they didn't have to have Hogan drop the title. He only dropped the title a couple of times.
Oh yeah, he dropped it.
He dropped it to
Andre once.
Warrior. That was.
Yep. And that's part of the reason why I never really got behind Hulk Hogan, because they had set him up as an invincible, hero. You just couldn't beat him. And and it's the same reason I don't like Brock Lesnar, for that same reason. You bring him in and you make him, completely undefeatable. You can beat him, but you got to have to kill him.
Believable in that role because of his UFC.
Yeah, that's true.
Remember, early Lesnar didn't have that mystique where he was unbeatable. Yeah. It wasn't until after he came back after doing the NFL and NFC thing where he got that mystique, because he was the UFC heavyweight champion. Then the reason why he lost the UFC title was because of the whatever that disease he had was. I can't think of the name of it right now. That's what caused him the UFC heavyweight championship.
But
he's believable as an unbeatable badass.
He is, but
especially when he's playing.
But I look at guys like The Undertaker when he first showed up. You were thinking, oh my God, he's going to destroy Hogan. He's going to destroy anybody he gets in the ring with. He's just this unstoppable force. And all of a sudden, he loses a match.
Well, he beat Hogan, though.
No, he did beat Hogan.
Yeah, he beat Hogan in the early. He came in the early '90s and he beat Hogan for the title. It's one of the only two
handful of times.
Two WWE World Heavyweight Championships that he held. He held more of the big gold than he did the WWE Championship.
Yep. And you sit and look at it, but they sort of killed that mystique with The Undertaker after a while, which was a good thing. It's like same thing with Goldberg. Remember when Goldberg first showed up?
Oh yeah.
They 173 and 0.
Yeah, the Undertaker, I really never got behind that anyway. I was never a fan of his gimmick. For me, the best Undertaker was the American Badass.
Exactly. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
That was believable. I just couldn't get behind the whole dead mortician who's managed by a quasi-dead mortician. It didn't make sense.
Nope, to me either. But I think the way that they worked it because he would go from this unstoppable force to, okay, we're going to let him lose a couple matches just to show you that he's not really unstoppable. It's just the intimidation thing. I got it from the Undertaker. I could live with that, but with Lesnar, they just turned him into a literal tank that nothing could hurt, nobody could hurt, and that just drove me nuts.
Lesnar, they have softened Lesnar up. He has lost or almost lost some matches. I don't know if you know who Ricochet is.
Not right offhand.
He's one of the smaller guys, light heavyweight kind of guy. He almost beat Lesnar at the one pay-per-view. Lesnar won it by the skin of his teeth because when Ricochet hit his finishing move, Lesnar had the wherewithal to put the Kimura lock on him, and that's how Lesnar beat him. Otherwise, he would have pinned Lesnar. And that would have been for the Universal Championship, by the way. But it actually made Lesnar look vulnerable to a smaller guy.
Well, Lesnar don't look too vulnerable to against too many people, honestly.
There's certain people that Lesnar will not sell moves against, and then there's other guys that he will. Ricochet apparently is one of those guys that he will sell against if they were to book Ricochet better than what they have lately. But
let's see, and like I said, I'm not a big Lesnar fan, but they have done some things with Lesnar I don't agree with. Like the whole squash match against Goldberg. I don't think that should have been a squash match. I understand why they did it.
There was logic behind that because it was supposed to catch Lesnar off guard. He wasn't expecting Goldberg to come back and just kick his ass like that. Let's face it, you have Lesnar basically still in the prime of his career. Goldberg hasn't been in wrestling for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's 50-some years old. Lesnar wasn't expecting Goldberg to come back and do what they had him do.
Yeah, well. But still, we'll just chalk that one up to whatever. Now, hey, Alaskan's out there. How you doing, Bubba?
Yeah. He wants wrestling. When we know it's predetermined. The same way you'll sit down and watch a Spider-Man movie. We know Spider-Man's going to win. We don't know how Spider-Man's going to win, but we know ultimately Spider-Man's going to win. It's the same thing. It's just a show. It's an entertainment. We don't sit here and look at it like it's an actual real competitive sport. We know that the outcomes are rigged and all that, but it's fun to watch. These guys do have athletic talent to them. You just got to put your comic book movie state of disbelief, just like you do when watching Spider-Man or the Avengers.
Yep, exactly. You have to just be able to let your mind let it go, And I'm not a big fan of wrestling in the 2020s. I really am not. Honestly, before AEW, the last real match I watched was probably 2007, 2008, maybe. And that was with TNA. So it's and that was just a couple of matches here and there. Before that, the last one I'd watched was the last Nitro. I watched the last Nitro. I found out that Vince McMahon bought it, and I was just like, nope, I'm done. That killed it for me right there. What's going on, Midnight?
Well, the Boogeyman ain't around no more, Alaska. He's done. Other than the Fiend, they really don't have a supernatural element to it right now.
And the Fiend is not really supernatural. He's just a weird dude wearing a mask. So
he's supposed to have supernatural powers, but it's supposed to be more subliminal, like what he's doing with Alexa Bliss right now, where they're having him brainwash her into thinking she's Sister Abigail or something.
Yeah.
Now, you know who designed the Fiend's mask? Who makes the Fiend's mask? Tom Savini. The guy who did the makeup for Night of the Living Dead and and a bunch of other horror movies. He's the one that made the Fiend's mask.
He did a good job. But I'm still to the point where I have watched a few AEW matches. I've watched a few with the new NWA matches. I will watch an occasional WWF match if somebody's in it that catches my eye. But other than that, what I watch most of all here lately is the Orange Cassidy matches, because I think this dude is just freaking amazing. I think Orange Cassidy has got incredible skills. To do the things he does with his hands in his pockets, that's just wow, you know.
Yeah. Midnight got a question. He wants to know if Kane is still the mayor. Yes, he is still the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. Glenn Jacobs is his name.
Yep, Glenn Jacobs. He's still the mayor, and hopefully he will be the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee for the foreseeable future. He's a good guy. He got a good head on his shoulders, too. Nobody would have figured he was that smart. Go figure.
But speaking of Orange Cassidy, have you seen the Mimosa match yet?
Yes. Yes. It was you know what? I was thinking, okay, this is going to be a stupid gimmick match. It was actually entertaining. It was actually not a bad match.
I'm like, this is going to be a crap fest of a match. It's going to be silliness. But no, it was actually pretty good. They had good psychology to it.
And what I liked about it was the way they started out. Normally, an Orange Cassidy match starts out slow and just, you know, he's playing around. Jericho didn't give him time for that. He was just on him. So I thought that was cool. The more I watch these matches with this guy, grant you, I'm normally not a fan of that kind of stuff in wrestling. I really ain't. But with Orange Cassidy, for some reason, I just do. It's weird, but I do. I think that there is an art with what he does and the way he does it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he comes off as a slow, sluggish, lazy guy until he starts moving, and then you realize, hey, this guy can work. He knows what he's doing in that ring. And taking bumps, he takes some of the hardest bumps I believe I've ever seen, or at least seen in the last several years. He's got some talent. Now, would I actually like to see him start doing more of the traditional wrestling stuff? Yeah, I would. I would like to see that. I'd like to see what he could really do in a match without the, gimmick. Without the Orange Cassidy persona. Just get out there and go. I think he would have been amazing. I think he'd be a world-class, wrestler. As good as anybody in the world at this point. But, hey, he's doing what he's doing, and he's making the most of it. And you got to congratulate him on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some of his earlier stuff where he was actually wrestling. The guy can just go.
I know he can. I've not seen it yet. I've been looking for videos. I know that for one company, he was a masked dude for a while. I've been looking for some of those matches. I just can't remember the name that he was using then. Hey, Gary, how are you? The show's been going for almost an hour, and you guys are just showing up. But I'm glad you're here.
Another one of the guys on there that can really go, who reminds me a lot of a younger Jeff Hardy, is Darby Allin. I don't know if you've seen any of his matches. He's the guy with the skateboard.
Nope.
Beats half his face like a skull.
Yeah.
That
I've seen pictures of him.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever seen a match.
He's a smaller guy, but he's got talent too. He put on, like I said, he reminds me of a younger Jeff Hardy. Remember how small Jeff Hardy was, and then when he went slowly, started putting a little more weight on. I think Darby Allin, if he were to put a little more weight on, he could be the next Jeff Hardy without the drug and alcohol problems, obviously.
Yeah. We've talked about the new little guys. Who are the big guys right now in the super heavyweights, 300 plus, or
I don't know
250, 260 plus?
Yeah, I don't know if any of them are certifiably over 300, but big guys, you got Brian Cage, Wardlow, Lance Armstrong. There's another guy, the new guy, I can't remember his darn name, but he's a big black dude. Can't remember his name right now.
See, that's the thing. You have to set up your shows, to catch different types of audiences. And this is where Vince McMahon was a master, especially in the 80s. He would have these big hulking guys, Hulk Hogan, Big John Studd, Andre the Giant.
Luchasaurus is another one.
Yeah.
I got their roster pulled up right now. So I'm going to look through their
But he would also have a lot of the smaller guys that can move, He'd have the Tito Santanas and Ricky Steamboat, guys that could get out there and just go and go and go and go.
Yeah, Will Hobbs, by the way, is the guy I was trying to remember, the black dude I was telling you about.
Okay, I have to look him up too. But
he's built kind of like Brian Cage. If you've seen Brian Cage,
yeah,
he looks like a black guy that was cloned from Brian Cage.
Okay, so not Ahmed Johnson big.
No, Brian Cage type big.
Okay. Okay, folks, we've been running this thing for about an hour now, so I think we're going to call it done for the night. Rich, you got anything to plug, anything to say, anything going on in your life?
Just watch This Week Unloaded tomorrow night over on the Unloaded Media channel. It should be starting around 8:30. Oh, and we forgot one of the big guys, Mr. Brody Lee, formerly known as WWE.
Yeah, Brody is huge. That's a big guy. As for me, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how many of you are actually still out there, and I don't know who's seeing this in replay, but Monday night, I am going to have YouTube's Bob Hansler on the show. For those of you who don't know, he does survivalist stuff from out in Texas. He's a remarkable gentleman. He really is. He's been through a lot the last few years. And I'm going to have him on the show. We're going to do a little talk to him. Let y'all get to know him a little bit. And we do appreciate each and every one of you guys for showing up tonight. Thank you very much.
Real quick before you cut it off, Midnight points out that I misspoke. It's not Lance Armstrong. I did it again. It's Lance Archer. I keep trying to call him Lance Armstrong for some damn reason whenever we do this show.
Archer.
It's Lance Archer.
Archer. How can you not have...
It's the A. It's Lance and an A. And, Which one's more famous, Lance Archer or Lance Armstrong? You know.
Okay, good point.
So
anyway, we're calling it quits, guys. I appreciate each and every one of you. Be careful. Be safe. I love y'all. Take care.